save pleasure to accompany you in today. We have often discussed many apocalyptic prophecies, haunting scenarios of the world's destruction. However, that time has not yet come. While we are engrossed in searching for signs of future disasters, an issue seemingly invisible is quietly infiltrating reality. The global birth rate is decreasing exponentially each year. Imagine a world where the population is aging, but people are increasingly reluctant to have children. What will happen when the number of young people dwindles, while the elderly make up the majority of the population? This situation is no longer a distant vision but has begun to manifest in reality. In June 2024, China announced that families having a second child will receive a one-time subsidy of 2,000 yuan. Families having a third child will receive 5,000 yuan.
Japan and South Korea have implemented various measures to encourage childbirth, including cash rewards, housing subsidies, and loans. Hungary has also rolled out housing purchase subsidies, low-interest loans, and partial debt forgiveness for families to encourage childbirth.
However, these policies have all failed, revealing the helplessness of nations in the face of the looming large-scale population crisis. Could this be a signal for an apocalypse in a way no one expected? Not by war or natural disaster, but by an irreversible population decline. History has witnessed a painful lesson about the impact of population decline, the decline of the Roman Empire. One of the key reasons leading to the collapse of Rome in the 5th century was a severe population decline, followed by economic, military, and political weaknesses. This rise and fall be a warning for humanity. Humanity has produced countless ancient civilizations, but in terms of the profound influence on the modern world, only one name deserves mention: the Roman Empire. A small nation surrounded by countless enemies, yet within 2 to 3 centuries, it turned the Mediterranean into its own inland sea. Their concrete structures spread across Europe, Asia, and Africa, leaving an indelible mark on the world.
All roads lead to Rome. This famous saying not only signifies the extensive transportation network, but also symbolizes an empire once the most glorious in history.
Yes, the protagonist of today's story is the Roman Empire. But before discussing its demise, we must turn back time to understand how Rome rose to such heights. According to Roman legend, Rome was founded by the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, abandoned children suckled by a she-wolf. Hence, Rome is also called the City of the Twins. From then on, Roman history spanned over a millennium until 476 AD, when the Western Roman Empire fell. During its existence, Rome went through 3 main periods. First was the Kingdom period, second the Republic, and third the Empire. In the Kingdom period, Rome was just a small town, gradually emerging from a tribal society to develop into a state. The political system then was a non-hereditary monarchy. There were a total of 7 kings, with power mainly in the hands of the aristocracy. Although commoners had freedom and land ownership, they had no political voice. By 509 BC, the last king of Rome was overthrown for being too tyrannical. This uprising plunged the country into chaos without leadership. At that time, Rome faced not only internal strife but also external threats. Give us political power, or else you, the nobles, go fight the enemies yourselves. Thereafter, Rome entered the Republican period, embarking on a path of democratic development. Rome's official name then was the Senate and the people of Rome, reflecting the power sharing between nobles and commoners.
However, although colonists could participate in politics, real power remained with the aristocracy. Initially, the power of the colonists in the Roman Republic was still very limited compared to the nobility. But over time, the continuous struggles between these two classes gradually shifted the balance of power. Early on, Rome became entangled in wars with neighboring countries, gradually conquering surrounding regions and rising to become a leading power in the Western Mediterranean.
As final collapse, Julius Caesar, one of Rome. By 27 BC, the Roman Senate bestowed the title Augustus, meaning revered and great, upon Octavian, the adopted son and official heir of Julius Caesar. Although Augustus declared the restoration of the Republic, in essence, he concentrated all power in his own hands, becoming Rome's supreme dictator. Many modern scholars believe that at that time, Augustus was effectively no different from an emperor, and his ascension marked the end of the Republic, ushering in the period of the Roman Empire.
Under Augustus and subsequent emperors, the Roman Empire continuously expanded its territory, with Rome as the center, eventually controlling the entire Mediterranean region. From its founding in the 8th century BC to the 2nd century AD, Rome rose to dominate 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. But then, within just the next 200 years, this mighty empire rapidly.
The reasons for Rome's decline remain a topic of debate among historians. Some opinions attribute it to invasions by barbarian tribes.
Others argue that the main cause was overexpansion of territory, leading to a massive military burden. Some other scholars blame the economic crisis and the weakening of the Roman army. However, one research group proposes a more frightening hypothesis. Population decline was the real reason that brought Rome to the brink of extinction.
Caesar and Christ.
In essence, Rome did not perish because it was conquered by force, but due to changes in the demographic structure of the empire itself. Before the empire collapsed, tribes following Christianity, with traditions of having many children, gradually replaced the native Roman population, becoming. Meanwhile, the original Roman class increasingly limited childbirth, effectively removing themselves from the flow of history. The population of Rome was once an astonishing phenomenon in the shadow archives. From around 100 AD to 400 AD, the city of Rome was the largest city in Europe.
Until 100 years later that Constantinople, or Istanbul, surpassed Rome to become Europe.
At its peak, the Roman Empire reached its zenith with an area of about 5 million. The population was estimated at about 70 million people, accounting for approximately 21%. To meet the management and sustenance needs of such a colossal population, Rome constructed a series of advanced engineering works. First is the elevated water supply system, providing clean water to the entire city. Second are the public baths that appeared throughout. Third are public toilets with a modern drainage system. And fourth are collective housing areas for the common populace.
This period also saw the military and economy develop strongly.
Men played a key role in both warfare and agricultural production. The Roman family system followed a strict patriarchal regime. The eldest man in the family held absolute control over all matters, including the right to sell children or sentenced. However, by the 1st century, when the empire stopped expanding its territory, the social structure one was the reduced demand for labor. As a commercial economy gradually replaced, many Romans no longer depended on children. Second was the increased role of women. When men went to war, women gained more control over property and household management.
Third was the psychology of not wanting to have children.
Women were no longer bound by childbirth to sustain the family economy. Many chose to live independently or have few.
Notably, the 12 Tables.
Rome's first written law code stipulated that if a son was born, parents were obligated to raise him, but if an daughter was born, the decision to raise or abandon her was left to the family. Consequently, many newborn girls were abandoned by their parents on the island of Thebes, turning it into an island of abandonment. This led to a severe gender imbalance in Roman society. Initially, while Rome continued to expand its territory, this situation did not cause serious consequences. But as wars diminished during the Pax Romana, 27 BC to 180 AD, the economy stabilized and society became peaceful. The desire to have children further declined. Men no longer held absolute authority, while women began seeking more independent lifestyle choices. These changes caused the birth rate to plummet, pushing Roman society into a severe labor shortage. When wars erupted again, the empire no longer had sufficient resources to maintain a powerful military. And so, Rome, one of history's greatest empires, began spiraling into decline. Irreversibly. But is Rome slowly repeating itself in the modern world? And is the declining birth rate a sign of inevitable collapse? Let's continue delving into historical lessons to find the answers. In ancient Rome, when women began controlling finances, they proved highly effective management capabilities. Augustus, the first emperor of the Roman Empire, also contributed significantly to reducing societal constraints on women.
Divorced or widowed women could now appear in social events as heads of households. From prolonged conquests, Rome accumulated immense wealth.
By the 1st century, the lives of Romans became extremely luxurious.
Hedonism flourished, with expensive clothing, refined foods, and luxurious furniture filling households.
Everyone plunged into a race of ostentation. Meanwhile, the bureaucratic machinery, with bribery and corruption becoming commonplace. Moral decay spread widely, and society fell into depression. This period is known as the era of Roman death. Augustus once hoped to build an era of peace and prosperity, but everything turned contrary to his expectations. In reality, the idea of limiting reproduction had existed in Rome for a long time.
About 200 years before Augustus ascended the throne, in the 2nd century BC, the Roman thinker Cato the Elder proposed the theory of birth planning, becoming one of the first in history to encourage limiting childbirth.
Cato's argument was very simple. In a Roman noble family, wealth was limited. If too many sons were produced, this wealth would be divided into small portions, preventing future generations from maintaining noble status.
A father could ensure his son remained a noble, but a husband might not. If property was deemed too small, the son's generation could fall into poverty. Is it possible that children are born only to suffer? Then it would be better not to have many children.
This argument sounds reasonable, but at that time, contraceptive methods were very limited. The birth rate did not decrease significantly. However, the gender ratio began to become imbalanced. Many single young men had to turn to brothels to satisfy their needs. The explosion of brothels actually promoted the development of the first contraceptive.
The Romans invented condoms from sheep intestines, used herbs like silphium or lemon juice as contraceptives and spermicides.
Contraception was no longer a barrier to pleasure. For the first time, nobles could enjoy pleasure without worrying about the consequences of it. At this time, Rome fell into an unprecedented state of moral decay. Wealthy men indulged in brothels or homosexual relationships, considering it a matter of pride.
Noble women married only for status and then freely sought pleasure outside.
Thirdly, the slave market boomed. As commerce developed, money flowed into Rome, and people no longer considered family the primary foundation for seeking happiness.
All these factors led to a shocking result. Romans no longer wanted to have children. Particularly, Rome's elite, senators, nobles, and knights, were the most afraid of having children. Augustus recognized the danger from population decline and was determined to implement reforms to promote childbirth. He believed the reason Romans did not want children was not merely economic or social factors, but deeper. It was moral decay, similar to the phenomenon observed in the Universe 25 mouse experiment. In these experiments, Calhoun and researchers created a paradise for mice, a closed space where they were provided unlimited food and water, creating conditions for uncontrolled population growth.
The result was that the mice only reproduced to a certain level, and a series of abnormal behaviors occurred. Reproduction stopped, and eventually the mouse colony perished.
Behavioral sink.
Fearing that Rome was also falling into a similar vicious cycle, in 18 BC, Augustus issued a series of laws to control personal life and promote marriage and childbirth. One of the most important policies was the law against adultery, aiming to maintain family stability, thereby boosting the birth rate.
Previously, adultery was always seen as a moral issue, not a crime.
But since this law was enacted, adultery was classified as a serious criminal offense, on par with violence and treason, to be tried by a special court. Women committing adultery would have all their property confiscated and be exiled to a remote island, a punishment all
their relatives,
including fathers or husbands, who knew but did not report and were also considered accomplices and charged with aiding adultery. Roman men were only allowed to have sexual relations with registered prostitutes or their own female slaves. Violating this would be convicted. Augustus believed that strictly controlling extramarital affairs would help maintain the traditional family model and thereby encourage reproduction. However, controlling adultery alone was not enough. Augustus also enacted marriage and childbearing obligation laws to force citizens to fulfill
At that time,
men aged 25 to 60 and women aged 20 to 50 were required to marry. Divorced women were not allowed to remain single for more than 18 months, while childless widows had to remarry within 2 years. This law also expanded marriage regulations, allowing Roman men to marry female slaves, and children born from such marriages were still recognized as legitimate citizens. This was seen as a measure to increase the number of Roman citizens, rather than relying solely on the nobility and free citizens. Those with many children would enjoy great privileges in society. Men with 3 or more children would be exempt from many taxes and given priority in appointments to important military officers. If they had 3 to 5 children, would also be exempt from.
Alongside these privileges,
those who were single or childless would face severe economic penalties, or have no inheritance rights unless they married within 100 days after a relative's death. If they still had no children after marriage, they would have to forfeit 90% of their inherited property. For women over 50 without children, they would lose all inheritance rights. And if the property exceeded 50,000 sesterces, they were forced to transfer the excess to others. Additionally, unmarried women had to pay an annual tax equivalent to 1% of their total assets, unless they had given birth to at least 3 children. Today, although forced childbirth measures like those in Rome no longer exist, some countries still maintain indirect measures such as natural.
Conversely, to adjust population policies, many governments have imposed heavy taxes on families with children,
creating a clear financial difference between married and single.
However, although Augustus's policies were coercive and strict,
they still could not reverse the trend of declining birth rates. Romans, especially the elite, continued to refuse their children, placing personal interests and enjoyment above the duty to maintain the race. Despite the harsh measures, the population deficit continued, leading Rome on an irreversible path of decline.
Looking back at history, are we following the same path as ancient Rome? Is the decline in birth rates in today's era a sign of an inevitable downfall?
Augustus's coercion of marriage and childbirth faced fierce opposition from the Roman nobility. They were not only dissatisfied with interference in their personal lives, but also felt these laws contradicted the lifestyle of their most respected president. Even Julio Caesar, Augustus's adoptive father, was notorious for his promiscuous pride,
never adhering to any moral rules regarding emotions.
He had affairs with the wives of both of his closest confidants, leading to their divorces. Strong opposition to these marriage laws did not only come from the nobility. Augustus's daughter, Julia, also became the most powerful symbol of resistance. Despite the strict rules set by her father, Julia openly had a romantic relationship with Aulus Atholius, the son of Mac Atholus, her father's old enemy.
This scandal shook all of Rome, making everyone wait to see how Augustus would handle it. To prove that the law had no exceptions, Augustus ordered the exile of his own daughter.
An act of harshness bordering on cruelty, aimed at reaffirming the strictness of the Julian laws. Regardless of status, violators must be punished. There are no forbidden zones, no exception.
But even as the emperor firmly enforced the law, opposition did not cease.
As waves of discontent spread in the 9th year, Augustus, then over 70, had to personally deliver a speech urging the nobility to abandon a single lifestyle. In this emotional address, he criticized the men of Rome present.
What should I call you? Men? When you do not fulfill any duties of men, citizens. When your actions only cause Rome's population to decline further. Think of Romulus, our great founding king. If he witnessed this decline,
if he saw you refusing to marry and have children, how angry you would be. You are destroying the Roman race, opposing your ancestors and disrespecting the god.
S. efforts to warn of Rome. He conducted 3 censuses. In the 28th year of his reign, the population of central Rome was 4.063 million.
In the 8th year, this number rose to 4.233 million. In the 14th year, when Augustus died, the population reached 4.937 million.
These numbers led Arnold John, a British historian, to believe that Augustus's policies had some effect on population growth. However, other scholars argue that this increase did not come from higher birth rates, but from policies expanding citizenship to non-Romans.
Even if the numbers change, the actual number of Roman-born citizens did not increase. Although Augustus implemented policies to stimulate reproduction, aiming to maintain the Roman citizen, but those who truly benefited were not native Romans, but barbarian tribes and slaves.
S. decline, surrounding tribes, whom the Romans called by the derogatory term.
To address the manpower shortage, Rome became increasingly reliant on barbarian. Emperor Claudius I even granted citizenship to a gladiator, solely because he had 4 healthy children eligible for military service. He turned this event into widespread propaganda, urging Roman citizens to follow the gladiator's example and have more children. But no matter how hard the emperors tried, Rome could not stop the replacement by foreigners. By 286, Emperor Diocletian split the empire into Eastern and Western Rome, marking the beginning of an irreversible century of decline. By the end of the 4th century, the Goths, a Germanic tribe, forced the Roman government to accept them as allies and settle within the empire. However, reliance on foreign mercenaries caused the Roman army to gradually lose its identity. Barbarian warriors not only learned Roman military organization but also seized control of the army, turning the empire into their puppet. In 410, the Gothic leader Alaric attacked and sacked Rome, leaving the city that was once the center of the world engulfed in flames for 3 days and nights. In 476, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, marking the official end of the Western Roman Empire.
Is the world today following the path Rome once took, with declining birth rates and aging populations? Will modern powers fall into the same spiral of decline as the empire that once ruled the world? In the 1960s, Romania's population reached zero growth, with the birth rate dropping to only 1.43%. This was a major shock for a country relying on a plentiful labor force to achieve its industrialization ambitions.
Located at the crossroads of Eastern Europe and the Balkan Peninsula, Romania is the largest country in the Balkan region.
Land of the Romans. After the fall of Western Rome, barbarian tribes flooded into Italy, making it hard for today's Romans to claim descent from ancient Romans. Eastern Rome survived until 1453, and later, many nations claimed to be successors of the empire, but they did not truly carry Roman blood. In this context, Romania is seen as a rare country that retains some Roman lineage and culture, while continuing to use a language derived from Latin. S. leader at the time, Nicolae Ceausescu, enacted one of history.
According to this decree, abortion and contraceptive use were considered illegal, except in cases where the woman's life was at risk during pregnancy or in cases of forced sexual intercourse. All women under 45 have the obligation to bear at least 5 children to contribute to the country. Previously, Romania was the country with the most liberal abortion and family planning policies in the EU. But after this decree took effect, contraceptive measures immediately disappeared from the market, only available illegally. All women had to undergo monthly medical checkups, while those over 25 who were still single or married but childless would have part of their salary deducted under the name of a childlessness tax. This control even went so far that the authorities established a special force, called the menstrual police. These officers were tasked with monitoring hospitals, tracking down pregnant women who did not give birth, and punishing those who secretly had abortions. Women caught avoiding pregnancy or having illegal abortions were imprisoned, while doctors who assisted them were also prosecuted.
If a woman was pregnant, the authorities would closely monitor her until childbirth,
ensuring the child had to be born. This coercive reproductive policy led to a serious consequence: a large number of abandoned newborns.
From 1966 to 1967, the birth rate in Romania surged from 1.43% to 2.74%.
But this only brought about a social crisis rather than a true population recovery. The government forced people to have children, but there were no financial support or welfare policies for families with many children.
Parents were unable to support the growing number of children,
leading to tens of thousands of children being. Meanwhile, Romania's healthcare system was completely unable to cope with the soaring birth wave. The number of pregnant women surged, but poor medical conditions led to thousands of deaths among women and newborns, making Romania's maternal mortality rate the highest in Europe,
while the child mortality rate far exceeded the average of neighboring countries.
To avoid criticism for the high number of infant deaths, the Romanian government ordered that only children who survived past 4 weeks of age be recorded in population. Children who died within the first 4 weeks of life were simply not included in official figures. Children who were lucky enough to survive and were placed in orphanages faced a harsh lot. There were too few caregivers with low qualifications. One person might have to care for 10, 20, or even 40 children. Many children lay in cribs all day, with no one to hold them, only staring at the ceiling or walls, to the point where they no longer cry or make sound. This tragic situation lasted for decades until the Ceausescu regime collapsed in 1989. When Romania opened up to the world, international media exposed the horrifying truth hidden in the orphanages. This led to thousands of Romanian children being adopted by families in the US, UK, Canada, and many other countries.
One of these children was Isidore Ruckel,
adopted by a couple in California, US, when he was 11 years old. Growing up in a warm family environment, he had the opportunity to develop normally. But in a 2016 interview with the BBC, Isidore shared that when he returned to Romania,
he could immediately recognize those who had grown up in orphanages, as they shared a common trait.
Their bodies constantly swayed back and forth, a habit formed due to lack of human interaction in childhood.
Research shows that children who grew up in Romanian orphanages had an average IQ of 73.
Just above the threshold for intellectual disability, which is an IQ of 70. Meanwhile, Romanian children adopted abroad had an average IQ of 81.
And children raised in normal families reached 109.
This 36-point IQ difference clearly reflects the horrific consequences of the coercive reproduction. Even the goal of increasing the population under Decree 770 failed. After a brief decade of growth, Romania's birth rate continued to decline in the 1970s. The heavy economic burden forced many families to find ways to circumvent the law. Wealthy women could buy contraceptives on the black market, while poor women were forced to resort to crude abortion methods, leading to many deaths. History has proven that coercive reproductive policies do not fundamentally solve the problem of population. If the economic and social causes of declining birth rates are not eliminated, all imposed measures will only have temporary effects. Although history has strange similarities, today's era also has significant differences. The declining birth rate in the 21st century is no longer a consequence of moral decay as in the but an inevitable trend of industrial and technological revolution. However, as artificial intelligence and robots continue,
will there come a day when machines replace humans, just as humans once replaced horses? What will the future hold? Let's wait and see. How did you feel about today's video? Please leave a comment below.